And welcome everybody to the 22nd edition of the Deserve to Win podcast. As always, I am your host, Eric J. Troutman, the czar of the TCPA, the czar of just about everything these days. Coming at you, of course, from our beautiful Deserve to Win studio. We are missing someone. Let me just start with the fact that we are missing Queenie. She was not available today, but we just had to get this one launched because of the new developments around AI. And this is going to be kind of a special edition of the Deserve to Win podcast, focusing on AI outreach technology, particularly around marketing, because just last week, the FCC came down with this very big rule, predictable rule, but still very important rule, finding that AI voice technology is in fact a pre-recorded or artificial voice that is going to be subject to the TCPA. And to mark the occasion, we figured we'd get together, we'd have a long discussion about this, break down this ruling, which is very important for many companies, and bring on two, not one, two fantastic guests, folks that are true innovators, really at the cutting edge of AI technology when it comes to outreach. Two great guys, Brian Podolak of Vocodia and Brandon Bowsky of V-Agents, formerly of course, Minerva Marketing is where he became very famous, but V-Agents is his new AI outreach. And we're bringing these AI voice channel communication platforms, these juggernauts, these really kind of captains of industry in this space, onto our show to talk about this new ruling and the impact it's going to have. Should people be freaking out? Should people be panicking? We're going to find out when we talk to these guys. But before we get there, who do we have? We know we don't have. We don't have Queenie. We miss our Queenie. We don't have Queenie today. But who do we have?
Hi guys, my name is Brittany Andres. I am an associate attorney at Troutman Amin, and I am the Baroness of the TCPA world.
The incredible Baroness. Now, you pronounced your name Brittany Andres today, as opposed to Andres. Have I been saying your name wrong this entire time?
No, I think it's like tomato, you know?
Okay, so just call her what you want. That's what I heard. Fantastic. And then to my right, who is this lovely blonde, miss my redhead still, but who do we have?
My name is Tori Guidry, and it's Guidry, not Guidry. Oh, and I am also known as a Dame, and I'm an associate at Troutman Amin LLP.
So that's what I have to put up with around here, right? Brittany's like, yeah, whatever you want to say. Tori's like, get it right or die. It's all good. And last but not least, my wonderful disembodied head. I always love seeing you, Duchess. You're filling in for Queenie. Big shoes to fill. Who do I have out in Arizona?
Angelica Munger, and I am a paralegal at Troutman Amin LLP and the Duchess.
The Duchess, the wonderful Duchess. Always so good to have you on, Angelica. You just like bring this radiance. It's always so nice to have you. In fact, it's so nice. We're going to start with you today. Actually, we're going to start with me. I'm going to level this out. Yeah, this is whatever. It's my show. I can do whatever the heck I want. So let's just kind of level set what happened first, and we're going to kind of break it down, talk about a couple other developments as well. So we know the FCC has been incredibly focused on the TCPA for the first couple of months of 2022. 2024. What year am I living in? I'm a time traveler. 2024 is where we find ourselves currently, which is really weird. You just think to stop and think we're in 2024. It's just crazy. It feels like so far in the future, but here we are. In January, February 2024, I've seen a bunch of new FCC rulings that have come down, really interpreting the TCPA. We know, of course, about the humongous one-to-one ruling that's going to impact the lead generators and require you to have one-to-one consent and no longer have the marketing partner pages that we're seeing on these web forms that have existed since the beginning of the creation of the lead generation industry. So that's a massive change. We know about the new revocation rule that just came out as well that limits people to just 10 business days to honor a revocation, but it does bring the marketing and the informational revocation rules into alignment for the first time ever, so there's benefit there. A couple other really weird rules around revocation, really important, but we're not going to talk about that one because the one we're going to talk about is the AI ruling, and I kind of already set this up. So just last week, the commission came out, and again, this was no surprise because like last October, there was a notice of intent, an NOI, where the commission asked for comment regarding how it should regulate artificial intelligence, AI, generative voice in the context of the TCPA. And we came right out. I mean, Troutman Amin came right out and said, obviously, guys, they're going to find that this is a pre-recorded or artificial voice message. Under the TCPA, of course it is artificial. The word artificial, like AI, literally has artificial in the title, okay? So, like, you kind of knew that that's where they were going to land. And yet, when this ruling came out, I could not believe the avalanche of, like, I was going to call it moaning. That's not really the right word. It was like worse than moaning. It was like devastation. In fact, somebody actually used the word, "this is devastating," in like a post online. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I mean, obviously your technology is going to be subject to the TCPA when you're using a pre-recorded artificial voice or generative AI voice to engage in outreach, right? Like that's plainly going to be regulated technology. I don't think anybody should be surprised that the TCPA is going to apply to that. And yet it was just like an avalanche of like sighs and wailing and gnashing of teeth, right? I mean, it was like, I don't even know what to say. It was crazy. The nice thing is we've got a few clients out of this. It was very positive. But I mean, really the response was just overwhelming. And I thought, wow, a lot of people were really caught off guard by this. And that's, of course, why I turned to Brian and Brandon, right, two of the sharpest minds in the AI field, and thought, hey, look, if two of the biggest guys in industry were caught by surprise, then maybe there's something to this. So we're going to talk to them. We're going to find out what they have to think about it. But from my eyes, I mean, we were very quick, Angelica and Tori, we were very quick on the TCPA world to say, guys, in fact, I think my initial blog on it was like, I'm not even going to cover this. I think I literally wrote that. Like, I'm barely even going to cover this because it's so obvious that the FCC is going to find that this is an artificial voice. And so when it came out, like, to me, it's no big surprise. So let me level set, like, here's what the ruling actually says, because there's still some confusion around this. I think some people think that it's just outright illegal to use AI outreach, and that's not true. That's not true. And I think like some of the magazines were getting it wrong. They were basically like Wired, I think, had some article that was kind of suggestive. I don't know. Maybe I'm confusing my magazines. But the point is, AI outreach is not illegal. Okay, it's not per se illegal. It is, however, can be treated as regulated technology under the TCPA. What that means is that you cannot deploy AI marketing technology to a cellular phone or to a landline without the express written consent of the consumer. All right, that's all this means. And if you're doing it for non-marketing purposes, you don't need express written consent, but you still need express consent. All right, so you're still going to need that express consent unless you're doing it for informational purposes to a landline and you're doing less than 3 attempts per month for most purposes. Now, these rules, they get very hyper-technical. I'm not going to give you all of them in a podcast. You're going to have to call me. You might even have to pay for this sort of information. But the bottom line is it's not as if these things are wholesale banned, okay? So if you've got an artificial voice technology platform, don't just like throw it in the toilet. There's still value to it. It's just you can't use it without consent, right? That's all this ruling actually says and does. And I'm going to tell you, if you didn't expect that, then you probably shouldn't have been in this industry, because obviously if you're engaging in this sort of outreach, again, I've said obviously like 5 times already. I'm going to probably say it 6 more times. This was obvious. It was obvious to everyone. And by the way, it wasn't just obvious to Troutman and me. Like, we are famous, of course, for seeing things happen before they happen. We are famous for making sure that our clients know about regulations, about new legislation perhaps that comes out before it comes out. Like, everyone comes to us because we're just like living in the future, although I said we were in 2022. But this one was so obvious that like even some of the other firms, right, were like, yeah, I mean, obviously this is going to be covered by the FCC's new rule, and it was. I mean, this was something that really we can't even take credit for being on the cutting edge of this because it was just so obvious that it was going to happen. All right, I've said enough on this. Angelica, Duchess, what do you got for us?
Yeah, so February, sorry, I was going to March now. On February 9th, the Third Circuit of Appeal brought some news about the CCPA, right? The CPPA, I'm sorry, where the consumers, the California Consumer Privacy Act, apparently it had been challenged by the Chambers of Commerce in California because when the initial regulations went into effect, there were some amendments that came forth in 2020, and they were to create an agency that was going to enforce these regulations, and they were also going to bring forth a few additional parts. There was 15 total. They had delayed on the date when they were actually supposed to come forth with these, regulations, their final regulations. And so it was a few days later, and at that time they said, oh, they're going to propose like a rulemaking. And it was like 9 months later when they finally came forth and said, here's our final proposal. And that was signed off by the Office of Administration of Law in California. And The very next day is when the chambers of commerce actually said, but wait, I'm sorry, I left a piece out. They only came forth with 12 and they were supposed to come forth with 15. So that's when the chambers of commerce said, but wait, it's not complete. And the act was for them to bring forth a complete implementation of regulating the Consumer Protection Act. And so it has been hung up, I guess, in court. So they kind of lost some of their enforceability over the last few months while they were waiting a decision. Now, they were able to enforce certain parts, but they weren't able to enforce it as a whole. But as of Friday, they are now back in action, full swing, and able to fully enforce the Consumer Privacy Act there in California. And obviously it was like overturned by the courts there. So
yeah, this is a huge deal. And so the AGs and the regulators in California were basically like this caged bull. And they were so frustrated and so frankly mad that the chamber brought this court effort. And it's just like, we're talking about the AI, like people looked at this effort to hold up the implementation of these rules as like it was going to be successful, right? And you see this all the time. And people thought, well, even if they lose in court, it's going to buy 6 months, it's going to buy, a year. How much notice did the court give everyone?
None. I mean, they're like
zero. The answer is zero, right? So all these companies that thought, oh, it's a great challenge that's out there, this is going to hold things up forever. The court came out lickety split and was like, rejected. These things are immediately enforceable, and the AGs are like off the go, right? What's that new agency created? There's like a new California Privacy Protection Agency in addition to the AGs that can enforce this thing. And they're just off like bucking bronchos. I guarantee you, like this just came out Friday. There's probably like 600 letters went out today to companies saying you're in violation. So this is incredibly important. I know that most of the time we're talking about telecom issues, TCPA issues, occasionally slap fighting issues. By the way, how bad did that last podcast perform? Not well. Y'all don't want to hear from slap fighters. I get it. You want to hear about the law. Very good. So, but this is such a big deal because anyone that's got a business dealing in California, anyone that's capturing California consumer data, you need to be aware that right now, boom, right, the right to be forgotten, all of these rights to deletions, the right to know what consumers have, the opt-in requirements, all these things that abide in the CCPA, they are enforceable and live right now. Even though we don't have, as Angelica correctly pointed out, a complete set of implementing regulations, court's like, I don't care. Get out there and abide by the rules of the law as written. And I can't even say I disagree with the ruling. In fact, as I mentioned earlier, I got a chuckle out of people that thought, oh, okay, we're going to have plenty of time now. Nah, you have no time. So if you have questions about this, obviously Angelica Puja, this is what they moonlight doing, is helping people. I'm kidding. It's actually a core part of their practice, helping folks around the California Privacy Act and, of course, the different state privacy acts that have just been proliferating like crazy. And we're going to be talking about these again at the Law Conference of Champions, right? The Troutman Amin Conference that everyone loved so much last year. It's coming again this year. It's going to be in July. Mark your calendars. You're going to want to be there. Trust me, you're going to want to be there because we're covering, of course, TCPA, mini TCPAs, but then state privacy and the California privacy bills, including SIPA, of course, which you covered so effectively last year, as well as AI, which, obviously we're going to be talking about here in a moment. Angelica, anything else for us today?
Well, I mean, we also have, to just further talk about the FCC and their artificial, I guess their official designation of AI generative voices being artificial voice under TCPA and what that looks like for everybody moving forward.
Is it weird that I just caught the connection between official and artificial? Official, artificial. I don't know. There's got to be some kind of relationship between those two words, at least at the root, maybe the Latin. But anyway, so what's your point, Angelica? What's your point? You don't just leave us hanging. Give us the goods.
So this was kind of came out last week, and it kind of caught people off guard. However, it did not catch us off guard because we were like, yeah, of course AI is considered an artificial voice and therefore is enforced under the TCPA. But the FCC came forth and clarified this, but it has created a lot of hubbub out there as far as in the industry, people being a little panicky and wondering what that looks like moving forward.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk to Brandon and Brian. We're going to find out. Are you excited to talk to them, Angelica?
Absolutely.
I'm excited too. But before we get there, we got to talk to these two ladies. Brittany, what do you got for us?
So I know this episode is AI limited edition, but I just want to step away from that real quick and bring us back to the basics. So as you know, hopefully, under the TCPA, there is personal liability. And that makes the TCPA one of the most dangerous statutes out there, is because you can be held personally liable. So whether you're an individual at a call center making the call or you're a CEO, you can be held personally liable.
Terrible. Just terrible.
Terrible.
But true.
So I have a case, Prong versus Chase Data. In that case, the court dismissed all the claims against the individual business owner, even though there were allegations that the business owner took steps in connection with the call, which is interesting. The Prong court relied on a Third Circuit Court of Appeals case, which basically said that there was doubt as to whether there was personal liability as to corporate officers under the TCPA. So, I mean, it's interesting. We definitely warn all our clients that you can be held personally liable. So it's interesting how the Third Circuit Court of Appeals has expressed doubt in that way.
Yeah, so City Select is the case of Third Circuit Court of Appeals. I was the first one to ever talk about this back on the beta version of TCPA World, which was TCPA Land. Don't go to that website now, it's a disaster. But TCPA Land was before TCPA World, and when I had that beta version, I actually covered City Select because it was very interesting. In every other jurisdiction in the country, right, if you are personally participating in what turns out to be a TCPA violation, even if you're doing so as part of your employment, right, you work for me, you're going to do what I tell you to do, right, and yet you get sued for doing it, and that's the TCPA. It's garbage. It's absolutely terrible. But the Third Circuit Court of Appeal in City Select was like, I'm not so sure about that.
Maybe.
But they never actually ruled on the issue. It's just like dicta. And you don't see this very often from courts. In fact, truthfully, they're not allowed to do this. But this Third Circuit panel is just like, I'm not going to decide this issue, but this just doesn't seem right to us. And so the courts within the Third Circuit footprint, and this one was in Pennsylvania, have kind of taken that one and really run with it. And so, the one place in the country where you are safer, not safe, safer than anywhere else as an individual working for a company that's engaging in outreach is in the Third Circuit footprint of, New Jersey, Vermont, and Pennsylvania? Oh, look at me. I'm so good at this. Fantastic stuff, Baroness. Anything else?
Thank you. No, that's it.
All right. Always good to have you, and thank you for delivering so well without Queenie here. Last but not least, the AI queen, right? Like, we saved you for last. You gave the big presentation last year. You are the one that everyone thinks of. Like, you might actually be the leading AI legal expert in the nation, which is crazy because you're like 22 years old. Actually, which makes sense because AI is developing technology. But you have been so tapped in, so on top of these developments. I mean, what is your take? Like, what do you think about this?
So, regarding the mass panic surrounding AI voices being officially artificial / pre-recorded, but around that, I think it had to do with the misleading headlines. Because if you look out there, it says AI voices illegal. Even the FCC's press release from Jessica Rosenworcel.
Lady Rosenworcel, as we call her around here. Yes, carry on.
Even that one was something along the lines with the FCC declares AI usage illegal in calls. So I think that had a lot to do with a lot of this panic. I mean, it just seemed from all these titles that they were outright saying that it was illegal, but you clarified it's not. It just is going to be regulated under law that already was there, which means that it's now officially artificial or pre-recorded voice. I don't think this was anything surprising. I don't think this was anything that we haven't said before. And honestly, I don't know how it could have went any other way.
That's a good point. Now, I called you AI Queen. I'm not sure I'm allowed to call you that because Queenie might take desperate offense.
AI Dame.
AI Dame. But that kind of sounds like G.I. Joe, right? AI Dame.
I'll take
Real
it.
American hero. Okay, no, sorry, it didn't go as far as I thought it was going to go. But how about now this other bill, though, right? Now, it's just so fascinating. Again, the TCPA is just the center of the universe. The new bill that is going to potentially modify the TCPA and the TSR, the telemarketing sales rules, to require a disclosure around AI usage in at least telemarketing outreach and the TSR and in the TCPA, any outreach utilizing AI to consumers requires potentially a disclosure to the consumer that, hey, AI is being utilized in this phone call. What do you think about that? First of all, did you see that coming? Does that have any corollary in the law anywhere else? And kind of what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely saw that coming. I believe that's required in Europe already. But also, what I kind of see next coming from this is an opt-out requirement potentially coming into place. I think that's going to be the next big one for people that don't want to speak to the AI. But I think if it's framed correctly, then most people would want a quicker, faster solution to their problems. So, and I don't think that having the disclosure is going to be that hard to implement with a system that's already created by AI.
Well, isn't the opt-out you just hang up?
Well, have that too, but what if you still want to, or you're still interested, but you don't want to talk to a robot?
Can't you just tell the robot, hey, I don't want to talk to you, connect me with the person, please?
Well, they have to have that in place to connect to the person.
All right, so, okay, touche, I see, you're very clever. I don't know, I'm going to talk to Brian and Brandon about this. I'm not sure where I come out on the disclosure requirement. Do you have a sense of that? Like, what's the AI queen or the AI dame's thoughts on this? I mean, I get it. You think it's a foregone conclusion. It's going to happen. It happened in Europe, so it's going to happen here. I get that directionally that's going to have to occur, but I guess I just don't understand why. Like, what's happening where this disclosure is so important to people?
Well, I mean, it might prevent fraud, or people thinking that they're speaking to someone they're not speaking to. It's an extra layer of protection against people that would use it for nefarious purposes.
Yeah, I guess that makes some sense. I'm not sold on that as a justification, though, but it makes some sense.
I agree. It's a bit of a stretch, but I think in some cases it could curb, misuse of the technology.
And again, I'm not saying I'm against it because I don't like AI, right? I mean, I'm on record saying AI has no business in the practice of law. By the way, there was this Above the Law article I saw the other day. I was just stunned by these guys are such sellouts now. They let who was it? Thomson Reuters do a paid post on Above the Law, but you didn't know that until you clicked on it. And so the headline was early legal adopters of AI see the greatest benefit. And I'm like, what? Every early adopter of AI has gotten sanctioned by the court because these things are ridiculous. They just make stuff up. Anyone that relies on AI in the practice of law is just a buffoon. And the day might come, don't get me wrong, the day might come, many years from now when lawyers are truly obsolete because AI is truly just superior. And it's just demonstrably so. But we are not anywhere near that. I mean, we're in a place right now where AI is just hallucinating and dreaming and nightmaring up cases that don't exist. And anyone that's relying on AI you're just a failure. I'm just going to tell you, man, if you're a lawyer that relies on AI for anything, you are a failure as an attorney. Your job is to know the law, understand the law, do the research, do the analysis, do the independent judgment to make good, sound decisions to help your client. If you are giving any piece of that away to AI, you are failing. There, I said it and I believe it. So in the practice of law, there ought to be massive disclaimers and red flags, and it ought to be unethical. To me, I think the ABA should come out and say this should not be used. But that's just my opinion, and that's actually unrelated to what we're talking about today, because we're not talking about AI in the practice of law, although that should be regulated. We're talking about outbound conversational AI, and to further that discussion, I am so proud and pleased through the power of the Troutman Amin LLP law firm to bring you an interview with two fantastic guests at the very cutting edge of AI outreach technology, Brian Podolak of Vocodia and Brandon Bowsky of V-Agents, coming at you right now. Now, through the power of Troutman Amin LLP, I'm incredibly excited to introduce not one guest, but two guests, both extremely heavy hitters in the realm of AI-empowered outreach. First, we've got Brandon Bowsky from V-Agents and also Brian Podolak, who's joining us from Vocodia, about to go public. Fantastic companies. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the first time that I've had two guests on the show at one time. So I can barely handle one guest, so we're going to see how this goes. But why don't you guys introduce yourself? Brandon, we'll start with you. Kind of who are you and what's your platform and how long have you been in the business?
Sure. So started a marketing company and recognized that there were opportunities to
no longer use offshore or onshore BPO resources to reach out to customers. So developed by the internal need, we created an automation for chat, text, email, and voice to reach out to customers, handle inbound calls, and route those accordingly. So that's started as just kind of a thing that I would need internally, and it's now become a platform that we're bringing to market here shortly.
Awesome. And it's called what? V Agents, I think. Is that right?
Or Vagins, call it what you want. Just talk about it.
Okay. And then also Brian Podolak, tell me about Vocodia, man.
Vocodia, very similar story as he just mentioned. I was in the call center space in Costa Rica for 18 years, had thousands of agents on my employee. Decided that the AI would be a better way to go. So we started a journey about 3 years ago to replace human agents with AI. And we also have a proprietary switch that allows us to accept tens of thousands of calls. So we've eliminated hold time for our clients, and we're built for the enterprise.
Very, very cool. So AI, let's just talk about what this term means. We hear it all the time in all kinds of different contexts, and I think it means a bunch of different things. When you're talking about your specific platforms, like when you think of AI as it's being deployed, what does it mean? We'll start with you, Brian, and we'll get to you also, Brandon. What does it mean for you?
For me, AI means simply this. When somebody is having a conversation, whether it's a chat, a call, an email, it doesn't matter the channel, do they feel like they're having a conversation with a human? Is the computer acting more like a human than a computer? That's in its simplest terms. Then, of course, you go to augmented intelligence and a lot of techie, geeky things. But to me, the end of the day, if you feel like you can have a conversation, whatever that may mean, with that machine, and you feel like you're speaking with a human or some intelligence behind it, for me, that's the simplest form of AI.
Brandon?
Well, our goal is to match each client's use case to the best of our ability, but to train proprietary models to handle whatever it is their goal is, whether it's qualification, customer service. We've got proprietary tech that'll help us kind of meet the needs of any business and solve any of their problems that they would ordinarily have a low skill human do.
So it sounds like AI, kind of in the context that we're talking about here, is, you really do have like an algorithmic decision engine that is driving the next communication. Now, both of you are using voice channel. It sounds like there's also a text channel component maybe as well. Are your platforms generating a voice in real time, or is this basically a pre-recorded voice that's then being played based upon the determinations of the system?
Ours are generated in real time.
Ours is a hybrid. There's some of it that's pre-recorded, and then there's some of it that may be generated real time.
Wow. So this is amazing. So focusing on the stuff that's generated in real time, this feels like technology that is emerging. It's new. Maybe even like 3 or 4 years ago, this didn't exist. Am I right, or am I just ill-informed?
100%. Yeah, they were bleeding edge with what they were doing. They were way ahead of the curve. Vocodia, that is.
Oh, wow. Well, way to go, Vocodia. Way to be way ahead of the curve, even according to Brandon. I wasn't expecting that answer. Okay, so we sit back and we think about then AI in terms of like generative voice. Literally, a human being is talking to, it's not even like a robot. You're literally talking to now an advanced large language model, which I assume is kind of what both of you folks are ultimately running. And the scary or wonderful, depending on your perspective about this, is you who have the platform, you don't necessarily know what that agent, what that AI intelligence is going to say next, right? This is kind of the idea.
Well, we have guardrails in place to kind of keep the conversations where they should be, or keep them from going where they shouldn't. We've got certain measures to prevent red teaming. We've got certain internal controls that prevent fraud, but obviously, yeah, like you said, there is an element of it that you really can't fully control without getting too tight.
It's interesting. And 100% with a lot of companies with compliance, sometimes they actually want something read word for word, right? Maybe a disclaimer, some kind of a verification script. So there are times where we need to go word for word for compliance, especially at the enterprise level. There's other times you want to have, let's say, a little bit of fun with it. At the end of the day, what you want to do is have somebody comfortable on the phone, right? When we watch the movies of robots in the future, they always have 2 eyes and arms and hands because that's what makes us comfortable in dealing with robotics. And it's the same thing with AI. We want people to be comfortable with it. So we want it not just to be conversational, but as I like to say, humanized conversation.
Fascinating. So I'm terrified of AI. I mean, I think you guys both know that. I just stop teaching the machine stuff. Okay, just I want dumb machines, not smart machines. But that's just me, and I'm very against it in the practice of law. But I definitely understand it in the engagement game. I understand the idea of low-skilled agents might actually provide a worse quality customer experience than a good large language model would. Most people think they don't want to talk to a robot, but I think the truth is, as long as these things are well programmed, well trained, you actually probably would prefer to talk to a robot in some instances than to somebody that really maybe isn't there doing their job as well as that robot could do it.
100%.
All right, so let's talk about what we brought you guys on here for. It wasn't just to talk about your products, which are really cool, and I do like to chat about that. But there's been two really, I think, sizable developments here in the TCPA space. One of them, I think, I did not see coming, which is the new legislative proposal, which we're going to talk about. But the one that, to me, was pretty obvious, and I thought kind of everyone in the space saw it coming, but I've been just shocked by the response that I'm seeing both on social media, and then my phone has just been blowing up. It's ridiculous how many phone calls I've been receiving on this. It's that the FCC, following its notice of intent last year, has determined, to me again, no big surprise, that a artificially generated AI voice is a pre-recorded or artificial voice call under the TCPA. Was this a surprise to you, gentlemen?
No.
I thought you might say that. So I mean, like, just kind of unpackage it from from your perspective, Brian. Since I think we just Brandon just lost his video here for a second. Did you guys see this coming? Did you kind of build that into your model as you were coming to market with your Vocodia strategy, or continuing to I guess occupy the market since you guys have been there for a bit?
Yeah, 100%. One of the reasons that clients come to us is not only do we have the AI, we also have this proprietary switch that helps clients stay compliant, from time of day rules in different states to CMS rules, which are different than TCPA, et cetera. So we wanted to make sure they had the proper verbiage in the leads they're collecting. Inbound obviously is a totally different animal than outbound, but we've been assisting our clients, recommending to good attorneys, I'm sure you know some, Eric, to make sure that they have the properly crafted language when they're collecting their leads so they can do their outbound outreach. There's certain states where just a predictive dialer is an issue, let alone a pre-recorded voice or an artificial voice. So to us, this ruling was really nothing else but just kind of reaffirming what they'd already discussed before.
Yeah, and Brandon, I know I saw you guys at Contact.io, V-Agents had that fantastic suite where you were kind of demoing your product, which was really cool. And I mean, you guys were already just actively talking about, this is going to be regulated by the TCPA. Make sure you have your express written.
Yeah, I mean, so coming from the background of generating leads, to me, I wouldn't even onboard a client if they couldn't prove consent. So I'm not blown away by this. And I think a lot of this comes off the back of a lot of what happened with the Joe Biden thing in New Hampshire with that artificial voice. I think a lot of that kind of pushed that forward maybe. But, there's always going to be bad actors in every space. For every good guy, there's going to be 100 bad guys, and the good guys have to, fight extra hard to do it. And the bad guys don't really have to fight. They just run and hide. I think that it's necessary for sure, because at the end of the day, if you don't have consent and you're using AI, there are people that are going to do that in a predatory way. I think it's up to the regulators to actually take action and do something. I hope this isn't something where, just like the TCPA, it's like, oh, well, here, collect your $1,500 demand letter, and it just creates a slew more of issues that everybody's already dealing with. And of course, the only ones that deal with that are the good guys, because the bad guys, you'll never figure out who they are. So hopefully that doesn't happen. But if it does, hey, you know what? We know a good attorney.
Well, look, I love it that two of the brightest minds in industry, like innovators that really have two of the most sophisticated and best kind of products out there, at least in development, in your case, Brandon, you guys are both saying the same thing. we saw this coming, and yeah, I mean, obviously this is what the regulators should do. I mean, are you surprised by the response that others who have AI platforms? I mean, I've heard people call this devastating, a game changer. I've heard people say that, somebody said on LinkedIn, like, man, this just hits different. This just destroyed my business. I am just confused. I'm wondering if you guys have any light to shed on these responses that we're seeing.
I think it tells you a little bit about how they're doing business, Eric.
Eric, the fact that most of the headlines talked about robocalls using AI became the ruling makes you wonder what they defined robocall as before that, right? So if you would already adhere to robocall regulations that have been around for 10 years or plus, this shouldn't have been a surprise, nor a shock, nor a worry.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you said that. I mean, it really was stunning to me that people somehow thought that AI-generated voices weren't covered by the TCPA. It's just like, I mean, I get it. No court or FCC had actually formally said that, but you got to be able to see that. I mean, if it's got green leaves and a brown trunk and branches and there's birds in it, it's a tree. Okay, like, this is not that complicated.
People knew we had a Eric, it might not identify as a tree. This is 2024, bro.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought of that. I was going to ask you, does
this was kind of like what got Capone was tax evasion and money laundering is involved with everything. I just feel this was like an extra thing to go after somebody already to add an additional fine or additional charge against. It really wasn't something new. It was just an add-on.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And Brandon, I'm absorbing kind of your point from earlier, which is, look, you got some good actors now. We are welcoming this. It's not really a change, just, the clarification, in my view, that AI generative voices constitute artificial voices. To me, I mean, plainly they do. That's just obvious. But your point was that, the TCPA is already so ticky-tack, it's already so gotcha, and it's already so full of these litigators that lie in wait and then jump out and attack you with these extortionist demands. I mean, are you worried about that as you bring your platform to market, Brandon, in particular, that like this is part of the business model that you got to kind of account for?
It's going to become an integral part of our onboarding process to make people aware of and to make it clear to them that they need to make sure they're abiding by the law to the letter of it. And also to know that this is going to become a cost of doing business, just as TCPA demand letters are in the call center space. You're going to get them whether you do it right or get them whether you do it wrong. And you've got to have a strategy and a plan and good legal counsel.
Respect there. Brian, so you guys are about to go IPO. In fact, by the time this, hopefully, knock on wood, by the time this airs, you guys will be a publicly traded company. And so congratulations. In the lead up, though, to kind of going IPO, help me to understand, like, what does the TCPA risk look like to a new publicly traded company that's a platform that relies on AI?
Yeah, sure. For a publicly traded company, of course, there's 10 more levels on everything you do, right? Not just TCPA. So we have a thorough boarding process. I'm sure very similar. We also have a thorough data verification process. So, for example, where did you get the data, right? And I'm always upset when I hear about these TCPA rules and not enough about the billions of dollars being scammed off Americans from offshore call centers, and nobody asks where did they get the data from. I think sometimes the priorities are a little different, but as we all mentioned, it's a lot easier to sue somebody here in the US for making a bad phone call, right? But as a public company, we have to take this a lot more serious. We do focus on clients that do inbound. We're very cautious on clients that are outbound only. We really do a thorough review on how they're collecting that data and where they're collecting that data. As of right now, our company policies, if you're not doing inbound and you're only looking for an outbound solution, we will not board you. We will only do the outbound if it's part of an inbound process. For example, somebody created a reservation. Now we need to call that customer back to do a change or a confirmation.
Interesting. I didn't realize. So Vocodia is actually not doing pure outbound campaigns. Brandon, is VAgents going to be, I know you're both, but are you going to be limiting in that way?
So when you say limiting, part of our vetting process is making sure we want to work with a company. At the end of the day, it's a startup, which is great, but I don't really need anyone's money at this point in my life. So I'm not just going to take it from the highest bidder that might do the wrong thing. So a lot of it for us is making sure that the use case of the client actually fits the product and serves the customer. Like, I'm not going to be, I don't want to name names, but I'm not going to be another guy with an SMS technology that's out here sending 1 million SMSs a day trying to deceive some consumers and make enough money to offset the the $500 demand letters here and there and the class actions that come with it. We are willing to onboard outbound focused businesses, but after a thorough vetting process. For example, if you're an insurance agency, you would naturally you would think you'd want to use the inbound capabilities of the product. I'm sure Brian would agree. There's so much benefit to being able to triage a problem and have the information without wasting the human time and putting somebody on hold and all that goes into that. But if somebody was to say, no, we just want to reach out to these customers, we generate these leads, here's where they come from, here's the TCPA, I'm not adverse to it, but it's not a free-for-all. It's not, a self-serve platform where you go on, you register, and we're like, great, here's an unlimited access to commit crimes. And I can imagine being public. That certainly isn't going to be the case with him either.
Yeah, I think I just add one more point on that, Eric. If you kind of remember when robodialing was for, no more press ones, all of a sudden ringless voicemail became the thing, right? So what we don't want to do is that Vocodia is the next solution to, or be a loophole around anything. So that's why we've decided to go after the enterprise level and just be careful on our messaging and the clients that we take on, which is still a huge market.
Yeah. No, that's that. Oh God, that ringless voicemail catastrophe. I remember people coming. Literally the ringless voicemail providers would show up at some of these conferences, at these shows where we're speaking, and they'd literally be at these booths saying, "This is your TCPA solution. This does not impact the TCPA. Voicemails aren't regulated by the TCPA." Just wild claims. Thank goodness those days are behind us. I mean, education is available now.
Eric, I had somebody come to me in the last couple of weeks, and the guy said, "Hey, you do a lot of stuff in like the telephony world, right?" I was like, "Okay, that's a weird question." And the guy goes, "Yeah, I'm looking to send, 1 million voicemails." And I'm like, I don't even want to know. Don't introduce me to this guy. I don't want to talk to him. Don't tell him I exist. Keep him away from me.
It's hilarious, man.
I think I sent him a TCPA World article on RVM from like 2 years ago and was like, "Here, read this."
Good. Well, look, and there you go, right? My educational platform continuing to change the world and do good things. So I appreciate that. No, it is funny the things that you hear. Like just the other day, I heard somebody basically ask me, not as legal advice, just like as practical advice. I just thought it was insane. Hey, so, I know there's a lot of changes coming. So do you think it's a good idea for us to just use the AI between now and like the 13th when this thing actually passes and becomes the law to just like start blasting people to get as much money in the door now as we can? And I'm like, so you're asking a lawyer if I think it's a good idea to just like break the law for a period of time to just get as much money as you can before like the FCC takes a formal action. No, I don't think that that's a good idea. I would advise against that, but I'm not giving you advice. I'm not your lawyer, and don't ask me questions like that. I don't want to hear people ask me horrible questions that obviously you know the answer. So anyway, so I think we're all in agreement that the FCC's action makes good sense. I think it was I agree with you, gentlemen. I think this was easily foreseeable. I am shocked and stunned that anybody didn't see this coming. And if you didn't, you really should be following TCPAworld.com and following this, obviously, our podcast and our wonderful offerings on our YouTube channel so you can stay informed. But there was something else that just happened. And, of course, this is the new bill that was proposed in Congress that would require a disclosure to a consumer in connection with an outbound AI marketing call to advise the consumer that they are talking to AI. Now this, I think, is a little different, right? And I understand where it's coming from. And I don't think I actually have taken a formal position on this. I'm not sure that I'm against it. I find it remarkable because this is the first time at any level, state or federal, that any governing body in the United States of America is requiring a disclosure regarding AI usage. This has never happened before. It's happening for the first time ever, wouldn't you know it, in a proposed amendment to the TCPA, because the TCPA is at the center of everything that's legal in this country. I am still kind of wrapping my head around it. I don't think, instinctively, I don't think I'm necessarily against it, whereas simultaneously, I'm not sure that I necessarily see the need for it either. So, anytime you have a new regulation that kind of smells like a gotcha, meaning not everyone's going to know this exists, you tack on a private right of action, and now all of a sudden people can sue you, just like for these call recording statutes that people didn't realize existed at first, and it's this huge heyday litigation. It's good for the plaintiff's lawyers. Is it really good for anyone else? But those are just kind of my thoughts off the top of my head. what do you guys think as individual companies, obviously, that are well positioned to communicate with consumers using AI technology? Disclaimers, is this something that you guys are directionally aligned with, or is it unnecessary and inappropriate for reasons that I'm not thinking of?
You'll go or I mean, personally, I think it's honestly not the worst thing in the world. So if you're doing things right, it shouldn't have a big impact. If you're doing things wrong, it's going to have a monumental impact. And if you're doing things wrong, you're probably not going to follow the rule anyway. The difficulty of discerning AI from human is only going to get more and more difficult. The disparity between AI and human is going to become less and less discernible over time. So having the disclosures, I don't really see a problem with it, especially if it's positioned well. I mean, there's a difference between saying, hi, this is blank contacting you with an artificially intelligent virtual agent designed to answer your question, or, hey, I'm an AI bot able to assist you faster than a human can, and I'm going to make this really quick and easy for you. It's all in the framing, I think. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. A lot of people freaked out about that. People were messaging me. I mean, you guys sent it to me first, and then I had a bunch of people contact me, very similar, LinkedIn, Skype, text. I was kind of like, okay, and I mean, it's really not bad if you're doing things the right way. But that's my take.
I'm a sales and marketing guy. I think it's freaking awesome. I want to talk to an AI instead of a person. I don't want to be on hold for 20 minutes. I don't want wrong information, Mr. Airline, when I brought my dog on and I had the wrong paperwork because your person didn't know what you were talking about. I encourage it, and I think everybody should say, talk to our AI instead of a stupid human. That's what I think.
Okay, all right. Well, I love it. I love it, and I like it that you're leaning into it. You're not afraid of it. I mean, I sit back and I look at it, and I just be honest, man. Anytime there's a new regulation that feels unnecessary, because like, what exactly is that disclosure supposed to accomplish, right? Like is it not AI phobic to invent and coin a word? Right, and I'm not saying maybe we should be AI phobic, right? I am. I admitted it earlier. I don't like AI. I don't like machine learning. But like, do I need to be told that I'm talking to AI? Why? Right. So that's kind of where I'm wrapping my head around. Like, what is the directional message of the legislature? What is the policy that's being furthered by that disclosure? Is it just empowering consumers to make choice in terms of communication preference? In which case, okay. Or is it some kind of maybe even subliminal messaging to consumers that they can't trust AI and they shouldn't be involved in a phone call that involves AI? You know what I mean? It kind of just leaves me a little cold. But it sounds like both of you guys are aligned with it and comfortable with it. And so, okay.
I think there might be a chance. Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead, Brian.
I was going to say, actually, I'm more concerned about how many people are not telling people they're recording the calls when they are. That's where the data gets stored. That's where it gets breached. And the majority of us that are using AI, myself included, we are recording calls, and we need to make sure that's disclosed in the beginning. And I think sometimes where the TCPA is focused on is just going down the wrong direction where the real issues are. The real issues are data breaches, people's data being stolen, people being ripped off, their grandmothers being ripped off. There's very few people making an AI that sounds like me to call my grandmother who's 97 years old. Anybody on this call could call my grandmother, tell them that's me. She's going to believe you that it's me, right? Because she's 97 years old. So like everything, this is one of those fear things where people react without thinking. They jump to conclusions without doing the research. As was mentioned earlier, what you said earlier, the bad people are going to keep doing bad things. The good people just have more regulations. And I think it was a little jumping to a conclusion there that should have been, I would have rather them get a committee and do some research and really have thought that out. But this is where we are today.
Yeah, I would say also, yeah, that's always better. But for some reason, I don't see that happen enough where they consult subject matter experts. They just say, this makes sense. And oftentimes it makes sense from the perspective they're viewing, which goes back to your question, Eric. What's the underlying message here? It could be AI phobic or anti-AI. It could also be that a lot of people complain about having to deal with, automated services and are, not familiar with the differences between your traditional IVRs and real AI. And that might be a little bit of it where, you have people saying like, hey, I'm an intelligent IVR and you can press one and I can tell you something versus actually having a conversation. I think most people would like to know. I mean, there's the uncanny valley theory that the closer you get to being human, once you reach a certain threshold, it gets to be really uncomfortable because it's like, this sounds human. This seems legit, but also, is this human? And I think I have actually advised clients, and we took the approach when we tested this of telling people it was AI. We didn't have a negative, there were no negative implications. Personally, I think giving somebody, a consumer, more information to make a decision isn't bad unless the information is bad. And it goes back to what Brian said. It's how you market it. It's how you discuss it, how you describe it. You know, would you rather sit on hold for 20 minutes waiting to speak to somebody to be put on hold for 3 minutes every time you have a question, or have the answers within seconds? And most consumers are going to say, get me off the phone as quickly as possible, because and I feel like this happened since 2001. Time just moves faster. And we're in the fastest paced society we've ever been in, and it's accelerating at a rapid rate. So with everybody's top commodity being time, anything that saves them time and accomplishes their goals should be seen as a win. So I'm not super shocked by it, but I do wonder the underlying cause. So, I mean, you know, maybe we'll find out. I bet if anybody can find it out, it's you, Eric.
Well, thank you. Brian, you wanted to weigh in there? It looked like you were going to say something now.
No, it's perfect. I agree.
Oh, yeah. No, guys, this has been a fantastic discussion. I could take us on a long tangent about Congress and how it doesn't work, and you know, we need better lawyers in there, that people actually are paying attention, and good subject matter experts, and actually a way to get intelligent people to testify in front of Congress to further their fact-finding mission and actually make good laws. But I feel like that's a completely different discussion, although it's one that I'm always happy to have. Tell you what, you guys have been hey, you wait for it, baby. 2026, it's coming. It's been a fantastic conversation, guys. You are exactly the breath of fresh air, the sound business rationale, reasoning minds that I wanted folks to hear from, because it just seemed like there's like breathless hysteria out there, and I was like, wait a second, we gotta get some real experts, some guys that really know what they're talking about. You know, folks that have tons of skin in the game, folks that are developing and really innovating and at the cutting edge of this. And you two are the ones that came right to my mind. So I'm so glad that you came on. Any last thoughts here from either one of you? I guess we'll start with Brian. Anything you want to share?
Yeah. Because Eric, you talked about how you got slammed with emails. I know I got slammed with emails. I'm assuming you got slammed with emails too, right?
Yeah.
We all did. And we're like, we're not Roman Islanders. Yes, you already have your disclaimers. It's pretty funny. Like, most of them I said, before you hit me up, you speak to your attorney who wrote your disclaimer, and almost none of them did. That was my most shocking part of the whole thing.
Yeah, no, you're the attorney. Didn't you know? That's your job. I think not all regulation is bad regulation, and people think anytime a rule is made or changed, it's always inherently bad. It's not always bad. I don't think that the government messes up 100% of the time. And I think a lot of people, when they see any regulatory change that might or might not impact them, they go into this panic state of frenzy instead of just stopping, reading, trying to understand, speaking to counsel, and making an informed decision. But what you got to do?
Yeah.
I love it. You guys have been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for being on the show. Wow. How much fun was that? These guys were fantastic. I mean, I don't know why I seem so surprised, but I guess I am a little bit surprised. I mean, look, these are two of the most innovative guys out there. I mean, both Vocodia. Vocodia, of course, is kind of a name brand in the space, major brand enterprise outreach solution, and also Inbound. Fantastic company. And of course, Brandon Bowsky, excuse me. Everyone knows Bowsky. Everyone knows Minerva, and of course, this new V-Agents platform that the guy is bringing to market. I mean, it looks just amazing. We saw it at Contact. It's just really something else. What did you think, Britt?
Oh, it was a lot of fun. I mean, knowing that AI is coming to the forefront of a lot of discussions, and AI is like the new hot topic that everybody is discussing. It was great to kind of get these experts on our podcast to kind of talk about their products and how they view the regulatory changes that are happening. And I'm not surprised that they're not surprised of the regulatory changes, the AI disclosures and such. So it's nice to hear that they're kind of ahead of the curve in that way.
Not surprised that they're not surprised. I agree with that. I mean, these guys are top drawer without question. I just think it's fascinating that AI is this emerging thing, right? Everyone's talking about AI, and of course, the first piece of regulation around it, where is it coming out of? The TCPA, right? Mm-hmm. We are the center of the universe, girls. Everything revolves around us, and I mean that, and it's a fantastic thing. Tori, what did you think?
I loved how whenever you asked them, like, is this bothering you? Is this going to affect your business in any way? And they were like, absolutely not. We saw this coming. Only the bad guys are going to be the ones that suffer.
Yeah, you like the bad guys suffering, or you like the good guys being prepared?
I like the good guys being prepared.
Yeah, I agree with that. It was a great job today, by the way, Tori. You were really on top of it. You were already the AI queen. And it's so amazing because we're starting to now talk about the Law Conference of Champions coming up in July. And of course, you last year at what was then called like the Troutman Amin Law Advertising Marketing something conference. That was some really long name before we settled on Law Conference of Champions. You did the AI presentation and got just rave reviews. I think I was shocked when I watched your presentations. You were kind of going through what's going on in Europe and some potential new things that might happen in America, that there was no regulation around it yet. And now when you get a chance to talk again this year in July, there's going to be regulation to talk about, and it's going to come under the TCPA. It's amazing.
Yeah. And I could say, I warned you about that one, I warned you about that one.
Good point. That's always exciting to say. Well, great job, Dame. Great job, Baroness. Duchess, my dear Duchess, disembodied head, the Duchess. What did you think out there in Arizona?
Well, I found it refreshing, Brandon's point, just kind of like, hey, not every regulation needs to be looked at in a negative way. I think people need to kind of like pivot their thinking around regulations. It's not always harmful. Obviously, there's always the consumer at the forefront, right? They're trying to protect the consumers. But I mean, if you too are also trying to form your business around a positive consumer experience, you really shouldn't have too much to sweat. So try to look at the silver lining, I guess.
And that's a great way to actually wrap the show, right? It's like this mindset change that so many people, I think, really need to start wrapping their mind around. I'm reminded, hearing Brian and hearing Brandon talk, I'm actually reminded of another great innovator, a guy named Adam Young, who actually, he's the guy from Ringba. I really like the guy a lot. I remember when the one-to-one ruling came out, he basically said, look, this is going to add longevity to this industry because it is credentialing. It is something that actually is good for the consumer. And beyond that, it is a moment in time when the regulators have actually taken a look at us and decided, hey, look, this is an industry that needs to grow up, it needs to mature, but ultimately it's one that we can get behind so long as these rules are followed. And I feel like this is a pivotal moment for AI as well. We knew that AI was going to be subject to regulation somewhere in the federal scheme. Like, we knew that was coming. The fact that the FCC is the one that has jumped up and said, we are going to take the reins on a robocall outreach, on artificial voice AI outreach, I think that's a pivotal moment. I think it's a meaningful moment. And I think if you look at the ruling, as we talked about earlier today, it's not 100% bad, right? There's lines in there where the commission was very clear that, look, we recognize that not every AI voice is a bad, evil clone voice trying to take advantage of someone's grandma. This is actually incredibly emerging and incredibly important technology. It is technology of today, but more importantly, it is technology of the future. And these are regulations that we now see not just being outlined for today, but for the future as well. And of course, it all comes back to the TCPA, to the Code of Federal Regulations, 47 CFR 64-1200, the TCPA CFR provisions. We are right at the center, ladies, of everything that is new emerging around digital advertising marketing law, including AI. It literally all comes down to TCPA World. And of course, you all should be following tcpaworld.com. As always, folks, it was so wonderful to have you on this, our 22nd edition of the Deserve to Win podcast. We'll see you next time, folks, for more truth, beauty, and telecom law. Even without Queenie. We missed you, Queenie.